Hello and welcome to Mile High Reefers. I'm Scott Anderson, and one of the coolest things about my 210 gallon setup is I've got my sump and my frag tanks downstairs in the basement and the main displays upstairs, and it's all one big system that works together. Now when I set this thing up 3, maybe 4 years ago, I used a reflow blowhole pump, and it sucked because it kept blowing up on me. Then I upgraded to the Panworld pump because it was a very high quality pump. Now, after many upgrades, the Panworld pump no longer has enough flow to run all my frag tanks and the big 210 upstairs and the big giant skimmer I got. So I had to upgrade. So I've got a new reflow hammerhead pump. Well, to put this in, I had to cut all my plumbing out and start from scratch. So come check out the new pump and the new setup. What we're looking at is the original setup for this frag system. And the green pump is the original reflow Triton pump. Before that, I used a reflow blowhole pump. The problem with these pumps is they overheated because they didn't have a fan cooling the motor. So after 2 or 3 months, they'd overheat, catastrophically fail, and your pump was sunk. So I had to upgrade to the Panworld pump. So to upgrade to the Panworld pump, I had to cut out most of the plumbing and change it over because it had different fitting sizes, different placements. Everything was completely different about the Panworld pump. I was able to reuse the valve manifold when I put the Panworld pump in. And the Panworld pump has worked great for years now. It is a fantastic pump. It just doesn't have the flow for my current needs. So here's the reflow hammerhead pump. And it's a big pump. It's rated for about 6,000 gallons per hour and has a head height of 24 feet, where the old pump was rated around 1750 and had a head height of 40 feet. Now, while the head height's not quite as good on this, the flow out of it's amazing. And really, I'm only going about 15 feet as far as head height goes anyways. To do the plumbing, I went ahead and actually plumbed in both the Panworld pump and the reflow pump. The idea being, if the reflow pump, which is my primary pump, ever goes down, I can turn a couple of valves and run off my Panworld pump. So if I ever have to take the reflow offline, it's fine. I just won't have quite as much flow going through my system. So how's it all work? Well, the water comes out of an 1.5-inch bulkhead and feeds into the reflow pump, and I've got a union on here so I can easily disconnect the pump if I need to. And then it comes out of the reflow pump, goes to another union so I can easily pull the pump and up to a valve. This valve is important because it allows me to control the flow out of the pump if I ever need to. Important thing about setting up a pump: when you place your valve after the outflow. Don't place your valve on the inflow, at least for flow regulation. I am going to put a valve inside the tank so I can actually just shut the water off so I can pull the pump. So here's where the magic comes in of the way I have my system set up. This is what I think makes it really unique. This valve, which I said allows me to throttle back the reflow if I need to, also is used to allow me to run the Panworld pump. If I shut this valve off and turn this valve on, I can start enabling the Panworld pump. So on the Panworld pump, I have a bulkhead feeding to a valve. Now, remember, we don't want to throttle down with this valve. You'll create cavitation within the pump. But I've got a valve here to keep water to go into the pump. I'm not actually using this thing right now. And then it flows back to another union. This way I can pull the pump for service if I ever need to. So I can close the valve and take it off here. I've got another union here, so I can take it off there. And then from here, I've got another valve up. Now this valve is important so I can throttle back the Panworld pump if I ever need to. From here, everything feeds up to a straight T. This allows me to split the water off 2 different ways. If I send it this way and open this valve, it allows me to send the water to the main system, and I can run the entire system off this Panworld if I need to. But I can also run it off of this valve and put an adapter that screws into the end of this valve, and I can run something else off of it. So if I ever need more flow to the skimmer, if I ever want to run something else off of that pump, all I got to do is put whatever adapter I need in here, hook it up, and I'm in. I can run that pump completely independent. For me, this setup gives me a lot of versatility. I can run the hammerhead pump on its own. I can run the Panworld pump on its own. I can run both of them together. I can pull either pump easily. I've set myself up for success. And I've got a backup. If either pump fails, I'm not hosed. I can keep going. So normally, water is going to be fed out of the Reef flow pump. It's going to go up the line, and then I've got two valves. This lower 1-inch valve runs the line, and it goes over to my skimmer. So the water for the skimmer comes around and shoots into my AquaSea EV1000. Now, the AquaSea EV1000s take massive pumps to run them. This thing needs a pump like the Panworld pump to run it. It takes almost 2,000 gallons of water an hour to run this thing. It takes a massive pump. So, that's why I got a big pump, is to run this big skimmer. And I gotta say, going from the Panworld pump running my whole system to having the Reef flow pump on here, filling as much water as this thing can handle, has made a huge difference. The amount of skim weight I'm getting out of here, the efficiency coming off of this thing has dramatically improved. This has been an awesome upgrade for my tank. Now we gotta feed water to the biopellet reactor. And that comes off this 3/4 inch valve that feeds down and into the biopellet reactor. The water exits the biopellet reactor through that tube. Now we need to get water to the frag tanks in the big tank upstairs. So I've got 245s. I avoided using 90s on here. 90s actually reduce flow. So by putting the 245s on here, I get a much gentler curve, which means less loss in flow. So it travels down this pipe, and then again, 2 more 45s heading up, all the way to this first valve. This valve is just plumbed in for the time being. If I need to add flow to my lower frag tank, it's easily done. I can add whatever sort of plumbing off of this valve to feed into this tank. So now we follow the pipe up to the second frag tank, where I've got another T and a valve. Now this valve allows me to control how much flow I've got going to my frag tank. So it comes out here and L's off. So the water flows through here and T's down. And I've got a valve located right before the injector into the water, the lock line. And that allows me to control the flow to the first lock line outlet. So then the pipe runs the length of the frag tank and goes all the way around to another outlet. And again, we've got lock line with a valve on it. And this provides the flow for my anemone frag tank. And we got a couple little anemones living in here. And I use more like a closed loop system up here because I can't have normal power heads in an anemone frag tank. So to keep my anemones from being ground up in a power head, I use a manifold system that injects water directly in here. And I mean, hey, I gotta get water into this tank anyways. For lighting on the anemone tank, I installed the extra pair of LED T5 lights that were on the tank upstairs. I just decided I didn't need that much light upstairs, so to save money, I brought them down here, and the low clearance of the lights works beautifully down here. They're nice, compact, right up against the wood, so they don't take up any room at all. They're the right distance off the water. It's working great. To get the water from the anemone tank to the frag tank down below, I've got a 2-inch drain, and I got a little egg crate cage I built on here. This is just to keep anemones from going down the drain or stopping up the drain. The water then flows down the drain into the coral frag tank that you've all seen before. And this coral frag tank uses power heads for the majority of its flow. So again, I'm using an internal 2-inch drain that feeds the water down to the sump, where it's filtered and sent back through the system. So now we gotta get the water upstairs to the tank. So it goes up this line, and I've got a valve here to control how much flow is going upstairs, and it goes up that hose, up through the floor/ceiling, and feeds into the tank. Coming from the basement, the water goes up this hose. I've got an extra valve here because redundancy is key. This allows me to shut the water off up here. It tees off and feeds up 2 pipes to the top of the tank. The water then enters the tank through 2 pipes that are just hanging off the back of the tank. So the water's got to get back downstairs. So inside of each of these overflows, and I have 2, I've got 2 Durzo standpipes that feed water down to the drains. So each Durzo standpipe feeds down 2 drain lines where they tee into one big 2-inch line and then tee again because it runs up the other side, although it's impossible to see here. And everything runs down through a hole in the floor behind that column. The water then feeds down the drains through the 2-inch pipe back to the other side of the sump, and then it goes down to the rotor tube. And the rotor tube is my sock filtration replacement, because as you can see, putting a sock in here would be nearly impossible. I've also got a union on this line, so I can easily modify these fittings if I ever need to. Because I'm completely and utterly afraid of overflowing the tank upstairs, I've actually got a drain there. If the main return line ever fills up completely, it will then be forced to go out that drain into the frag tanks and back down to the sump. I've never had to use it, but I'm glad that it's there. It's a very inexpensive, redundant thing I've put in to make sure that I don't lose water to the floor or do damage to my house. When I did this project, I could have saved some money. I could have cut into the old valve manifold, kind of modified everything, but the sizes would have been wrong. I had 1.25 inches there, not 1.5 inches like the pump needs. I had the wrong size valve, so everything wasn't going to be quite right. But I could have saved money there doing that. But I think my decision to completely gut the feed side of my plumbing, the part that where the water is being pushed from the pump, made a huge difference. Everything's right now. Everything works right. Every hose is the right size. Every valve is the right size. I've got unions where I need them. Pumps are easily pulled. So it was a huge ordeal. It took me the better part of a week to get it all done completely. And it wasn't cheap. I'm not bragging here, but this is like a $600 job. The pump was about a $400 pump, and the plumbing was another $200. So this was a huge upgrade for me, but I'm so excited. It's working great. So there you have it. That's how I have my 210-gallon tank upstairs plumbed to a basement sump with 2 frag tanks hooked up to it. That's how I did it. On a side note, Reef Talk is no longer going to be on my channel or Steve Rodder's channel anymore. If you're not familiar with Reef Talk is the talk show that I do with Steve Rodder. We try to get guests on. We put it out every Sunday. And up until now, we've each been uploading it to our channel. So if you're subscribed to myself and you're subscribed to Steve, you'll probably be getting 2 notifications that there's 2 Reef Talks out, and they're all basically the same thing. Well, we've gotten Reef Talk on its own channel. So I've got the link below. Subscribe to Reef Talk. The Reef Talk channel is going to be the only place where Reef Talk lives from now on. So I'm stoked by the new channel. This is going to be a really cool thing. It's going to allow us to kind of build a whole Reef Talk community. I'm really looking forward to this. So thanks for watching this episode of Mile High Reefers. Like, comment, subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed to Reef Talk, get over to the Reef Talk channel and subscribe.